Okay, so in this video, we are going to be milling up this ambrosia maple. Part of it has already been pre-milled when we did the butcher block earlier in the first video, part 1, which we just recapped. So now we're going to mill up rough cut dimensions for these frame pieces. So first we're going to be starting with the legs. The legs are going to be 34 inches long. So at the top is going to be about 36 inches, and then we're going to add wheels. So the overall dimensions of this butcher block is going to be about 40 inches. That's what the client wanted. They wanted about a 40-inch tall, 39 to 40-inch tall butcher block kitchen island that he'll be standing at. He's a little taller, he said. So we're going to start rough milling up these legs, and then we're going to eventually laminate them. Like I said, this is all ambrosia maple. This video will also be milling up the bottom shelves and just mounting them. We're not going to permanently mount them. We're just going to lay them in place just to get a visual of how this whole unit's going to look before we go to part 3, which will be painting, finishing, buttoning everything up. All right, so let's go. We're going to mill everything up. Like I said, we're going to go through the miter saw, table saw, jointer, planer, and then we're going to laminate these legs to start. Okay, so later that day, a few hours later, the legs are laminated and dried up. The glue's dry, so now we're going to run them through the planer just to get some of this glue off and get them to the final thickness before we take them over to the miter saw, cut them to the final dimensions, as we're going to do right here. It was very limited what I had to cut here. It was pretty, they glued it up pretty good. There wasn't much overhang, so we're just going to clean these edges up, and these will sit at 34 inches exactly. Go in. As you can see here, there's little imperfections here on these legs where the wood meets here. So we're just going to put some CA glue in these cracks. And we're just going to put some regular wood chips and glue in there and just fill it in. And then we're going to be painting these anyway, so you won't be able to see when it's all said and done. So now we're going to take all these frame pieces over to the router table, and we're going to run a chamfer on each edge of the legs and also the stretchers and aprons here. And that's what we're going to do now. So for the legs, we're going to raise the chamfer up a little bit, make a little more of an aggressive cut here, since these are going to be a lot thicker than the frame pieces. So we're going to just put a little more aggressive chamfer on these. That's what we're doing here. We're just going to adjust the router bit, the chamfer bit, and then we're just going to run each leg through all 4 sides. chip out here, unfortunately. So we're going to put this piece back. Okay, so now we're just going to lay everything out, and we're going to start marking where we're going to be cutting our mortises. So for this joiner, we're going to be using the Festool Domino joiner. I know it's considered cheating, but it's what I have, and I'm a fairly busy shop, so I have to kind of get this stuff in and out. And also, you know, it doesn't guarantee your stuff's going to be perfect, you know, and you'll see in a few minutes I'm going to make a mistake using the Domino joiner. So let's get back. So we're just going to lay everything out how we want it to look. So we have to use our pre-made spacers that we cut here for the bottom toe kick. And also I have some 13-inch wood spacers here, as you see. They're going to be using it for spacing for our bottom shelf and middle shelf. So we're just going to lay everything out, get a visual, and then we're going to start marking and using a marking gauge and also a combination square, speed square, to get our markings for where we're going to put our mortises. Okay, so the tricky part of this is going to be the middle shelf. The bottom and the top are fairly simple with these little combination squares. You can kind of lay out your marking after you line up your stretcher with your spacer, and then you can kind of just mark it. It's fairly simple. The middle bracket's going to be the tough one because we're going to have to use a long ruler, measure out exactly on all 4 legs on both sides for the inside and outside stretcher and aprons. So that's going to be the tricky part. So here, marking the bottom and the top is fairly simple. It's here that's where it gets a little tricky because you have this middle shelf. Even though you have your spacers and you laid out your first line, you have to measure one of them. They all have to be identical for all 4 legs. And steps like these are why I say the domino is really not as simple as it is, as people make it out to be. Now, once you have your layout done, which is very, you know, the same layout you're going to have to do if you're manually cutting your mortise and tenons. It's the same type of layout. You still have to lay everything out. And if your layout is wrong, or your markings are wrong, you're going to have a lot of issues. So here we're just going to go and set our domino up. We're going to find our thickness of each stretcher and apron, which I believe was 30 mil. Remember, Festool uses a metric system, not imperial. So about 30 mil. So we're going to set our cutter, our plate, to about 15 mil, and that will find the center of our piece. So that way we can interchange each bottom or top depending on how we want to lay it out. So we're just going to lay this out. We're also going to set our depth at 25 mil when we do our cut, and then we're going to set our, for our stretchers and aprons, we're going to have the set for the tight set in here, because we want the domino to fit tight and snug, and the legs will set the looser setting for a wider mortise. I also do multiple dry fittings while I'm setting these up. And here's where I made a mistake. So I didn't mirror the leg correctly here. When I cut my mortise, I cut them on the same side. Not the same side on the same leg, but the same side on the other opposite leg, so they weren't mirrored. So here I have to fix these. I'm just going to use some maple trim I have here, and I'm just going to cut them, sand them down, and make them fit in, and get back to work here. So once they dried, after about an hour, it was fine. You won't be able to see because the stretcher and aprons will cover those mortises up. They were off like, you know, I would say 1/8 of an inch, so we have to just recut. So now I'm going to re-dry fit again, and I'm doing this. This is important because I'm going to be putting center braces in, and this will give me the exact measurement where I'm going to be putting my mortises for these center braces for all 3 levels. So, and remember that the bottom 2 levels are going to be tough because I have to adjust for the bottom shelf. So I have to put in the same mortise, the thickness lower, or where the shelf's going to sit. So where my cleat will be, we'll have to set our mortise. Square. Everything's nice and square. You can see here now we're going to start building our wider frame here. This is going to be the front and backs. We're going to set these up and clamp them nice and tight. So this is, you know, point of no return here. We got to make sure we're good and square and we're not over tightening our clamps, but also we also want to get a good even squeeze out. So now it's the next day, and this is where it gets fun because this is a pretty big table. So putting this together is like a big giant puzzle, but it's also very heavy and awkward and tight in my shop. I eventually will pull it outside where I have a little more space to lay it out. And it's actually a pretty nice day out. So we're just going to lay these out. We're going to set the glue, and then we're going to just make sure it is all lined up here, line it up, and then we're, like I said, we're going to take it outside to permanently set this. So make sure that the holes, the mortises were correct, and they were, which is good. Okay, so let's take this outside, and then we'll button this up. We're going to knock everything down, and then we're going to clamp it up real tight. So for added strength, I also put these little corner brackets in for the top stretcher and aprons. These will attach the frames a little tighter and also help square them up. It just gives a little added strength. So I'm just going to countersink, pre-drill some holes, then we're just going to tighten them up with some 2-inch screws and just keep them nice and square. It just helps fortify this frame. This is going to be a real heavy unit and it's going to be on wheels. So pulling around, I want to make sure it's good to go. Okay, so here we're just going to put some cleats on for the bottom, to hold the bottom 2 shelves. So we're just going to pre-countersink some holes. So we're going to screw these in. We're also going to brad nail and glue to permanently set these. And one of the most important parts of woodworking is having good technique and pattern. So I have spacers for everything. I try to use the same type of spacers for every build, even though I custom build, so it's hard to guarantee. But I try to use the same type of thickness for all bottom shelves. So it's about 1 inch thick bottom shelves, just under. So I have a spacer I just keep handy for when I do these installs. Okay, so now we're just going to sand everything down to about 80 grit again, to 100 grit possibly, and we're going to just get it nice and ready for final layout. So now here we're going to start milling up our bottom shelves, and we're just going to lay these in. We're not going to permanently mount them. We're just going to get it how it's going to get it to a point where we're going to visually be able to see what it looks like before we go to part 3, which will be buttoning everything up, painting, cleaning up, installing the caster wheels, mounting the top, which we will do on site, so I'm not sure if that's going to be in the video or not. Also permanently mounting the bottom shelves and just putting more finish on the top to get it nice and smooth and ready for delivery. Okay, so I think this is a pretty good stopping point here for this video. It's pretty much done. The hard part's done, at least in my opinion. So now that part 3 will be just buttoning everything up, installing the top if we decide to do it. If I could just get a video of that, well, we're just going to use C-clips for that. So we'll put those slots in next video. We'll put the casters on. We're going to paint the bottom frame, unfortunately. We're going to paint it white, and then we're going to put more finish on the bottom shelves and also the top. Get it ready for delivery, and then we'll, like I said, when we deliver, we'll probably put the top on site. So it pretty much came out real nice. The hard part, like I said, it's done. This maple I think looks good. I like ambrosia maple. I know it doesn't get a great rap, but I've had it for my butcher block for 6-7 years. I never had an issue with it. All right, well, thanks for watching.